The 19th of the 5th, 2025. The time is 5 minutes past 8. 3 topics on the docket today, and all of them techier than techie things. Oh, the humanity. In the first instance, we'll talk about Ollie Oaks. Joe Saywood, controversial figure as far as an accredited journalist, but he's dropped some things. I heard some things in the background, but thought nobody was talking about it. Joe Saywood is, however, in his God tier newsletter, and so we will therefore. Damon Hill chimes in on Maximilian Verstappen and puts him amongst the pantheon of the greats, alongside Michael, even alongside Fangio, so too alongside Sir Lewis. But where exactly he was pushed on the High Performance podcast, we'll talk about that. And so too, we'll talk about the rumour that his Liam Lawson will be replaced soon, shortly after the summer break, potentially by X. We'll come to it, I promise. So go on then. In the first instance, a couple of different bits and bobs are leaking about Ollie Oaks. We, in the first instance, smelled a rat, just as did Karun Chandak. All these guys and girls of Alpine were leaving to join Cadillac F1, rumoured to be 5 different key personnel within the last couple of weeks. What's triggering this churn then? Whatsoever could be going on at Alpine? Now, we know Flavio Briatore, almost for a fact, was brought in with a view to increase the asset value of Alpine to anywhere between 1.4 and 1.5 billion so that they could push the red button on a sale. Flavio Briatore, Mr. Criminalisation, Mr. Get it over the line at any cost. That's who he is. And we also know for a fact that Ollie Oaks has links to Nikita Mazepin, and so Nikita Mazepin's dad, Uralkali, was the sponsor of Ollie Oaks' high-tech F2 team. Joe Saywood writes the following, and he gets techie things. Says that a police statement revealed that William Oaks, Ollie Oaks' younger brother, was arrested in possession of, quote, a large amount of cash, unquote, which eyewitnesses report had been carried around in a number of briefcases. The actual figure is believed to be around 1 million Great British pounds in total, although we have also heard that it was a quarter of that 1 million pounds. Whatsoever might he have been doing with that amount of money? Chat, whence did it come from? Do you know what I mean? 1 million. Why, how, where, what for? This is techie. I mean, but then this is F1, eh? What else would you expect in the Piranha's tank? That it is a circumstance, that is the weird and wacky world, that is the one that F's. It makes perfect sense, even with the benefit of hindsight. Here's what Joe Saywood continues though. The fact that Oaks appeared in Imola was an indication, and he was in Imola and he was in Dubai not too shortly before then. The fact that Ollie Oaks was in Imola was an indication that he's intending to go on with his own business, high-tech in F2, and although the split between himself and Alpine is a setback, it was never going to be a long-term relationship anyway. No relationship between an employee and Alpine could ever be a medium-term to long-term relationship. They are not the company for which you want to work. Do you know what I mean? Techier than techie things each and every single time. But I digress. Joe Saywood continues. Most of the published stories about William Oaks seem to have had very little substance. No racing cars. Go on then. Buckle up, chat. Dylan, you're a legend. Benzie, Stephen, Tarek, Michael, here's the clincher. This is the money shot. Joe Saywood reports most of the published stories about William Oaks seem to have had very little substance. No racing cars were seized, and there is no evidence of any money having been transported with the F2 freight from Saudi Arabia after the last race, as has been suggested. Where, Joe Saywood, did you see this suggested? We will infer, therefore, that somebody somewhere was talking about and or wrote about this way. That William Oaks and or the one that they call Ollie Oaks allegedly have been transporting cash from somewhere, I don't know. Where would you think could be sanctioned? Where might they be transporting money from speculatively, allegedly? Why not just do a transfer? Well, if there is sanctions upon this place from where they were transferring money, then that would make sense that he had £1 million Great British pounds in cash. Would it not? Let me read this out again, because this isn't me saying this. This is Joe Saywood saying it was publicly reported that racing cars were seized and there was no evidence of money having been transported in F2 cars in their freights from Saudi Arabia. So you mean to tell me that the reports being bandied around that Michael Oaks, that William Oaks even allegedly was transporting around cash in these F2 cars in freights? What? FIA owned freight. Oh my gosh. That, ladies and gentlemen, is chaos of the highest order. Joe Saywood continues, there is also no indication that the money also came from Russia, although that was assumed by some media because Oaks' previous links with the Massapin family. I would flip that on its head. Why in a hypothetical world, if we're playing hypothetical games, why would Ollie Oaks' younger brother have £1 million in cash? Why? Just do a transfer, surely. Backs is a thing. It's easier. It's quicker. Put it in Bitcoin. Give me the bloody code. There are a gazillion different ways that you can transfer money if, of course, you are living in a world sans sanctions. If, of course. This isn't me connecting the dots and doing a puff in it. I don't know why William Oaks had in there, but I am trying to understand. Joe Saywood continues, there is nothing illegal about paying for a sponsorship in cash, although it is a rather unusual case these days when there is such a thing as cash transfers and backs, ladies and gentlemen, unless of course you're living in a country or carrying the money from a country that's currently under sanctions from the Western world, all of the banks that matter. But I digress. This is all allegedly, of course. Techier than techie things, I tell you. Makes life more difficult for the person receiving the money if you carry it in cash because of the tight money laundering restrictions that exist with cash transactions in the UK. Bank transfers are a great deal easier, writes Joe Saywood. No kidding, Sherlock. Of course they are. Normally, he continues, teams would be suspicious about cash and would not agree. But in the past, a lot of careers in F1 were built on drivers turning up with bags of cash. Yeah, in 1951. We're in the age where backs transfers are a real thing. Do you know what I mean? Anybody with an app can transfer a SH1T load of money. It is not difficult. But again, that raises questions about why William Oaks, Ollie Oaks' younger brother, was caught carrying around £1 million Great British pounds in a rucksack. I digress. Connect the dots as you will, but again, all allegedly, all conjecture, all speculation. I didn't realise that F2 stuff, transporting the cash in cars, had been widely reported. That's the first that I'm hearing of it, but I digress. Damon Hill on Maximilian Verstappen was quoted saying a couple different things. Listen, we're always going to have the great conversations. Who's the best? Who's the fastest? Who's the most resilient? Who's the most decorated as far as silverware? Who's the most experienced? Who served longest in F1? Who is the winningest? These conversations in any F1 space, as soon as you fire it up, that's the conversation done for the night. It will be Max, it will be Lewis, it will be Fangio, it will be Jim Clark, it will be Michael, it will be Ayrton Senna. Those are the type of names that you've got to hear. And it is fun. It's F1 barbershop shop talk, of course. But when someone like Damon Hill chimes in, one-time champion, a dude that some say is steeped in British bias, people are going to pay attention to this. He was asked by Jake Humphries on the High Performance podcast recently about who he thought was number one. Is Maximilian Verstappen the best driver, the GOAT of the one that Fs? He responded thus, quote, possibly. I mean, in terms of Max's effectiveness, in terms of his preparedness, his maturity, his speed, Maximilian Verstappen is a phenomenon. This is Damon Hill talking. Oh, and by the way, Damon Hill is the one that said of Maximilian Verstappen's moves last year, circa Cota, around Mexico, that sport doesn't build character, it reveals it. Lest we forget, he also went on to say that Maximilian Verstappen employs Dick Dastardly talks, tactics even. If everybody around the track drove like Maximilian Verstappen, said Damon Hill, then nobody would ever be able to pull and stick another overtaking manoeuvre ever again. And Max Verstappen fans didn't like that. There were calls and cries of bias against Max Verstappen, British bias, some would say. Some speculated that Damon Hill was forced out of his position with Sky Sports F1 because of these comments. Now, Damon's always been a straight shooter to a fault, potentially old English gentleman settings. Is that compatible with the unique brand of racing that these F1 drivers employ in 2025, having grown up in the sim on iRacer Gran Turismo? Probably not, some might argue. If you want to level a critique at Damon Hill, brilliant driver though he was, 1995 was not his best season. Some would say he wasn't championship worthy. That's why Frank Williams got rid of him after 1995, or at least agreed to sever his contract. 96 was when Damon Hill went on to win his championship, his only championship of the drivers' variety, soon to be replaced by Hans-Harald Frentzen. I'm not sure whether Damon Hill is worthy, warrants this criticism, but I would say this: some of the way, the terms, the way in which he couches his arguments against Maximilian Verstappen, when the dude's pulling moves like he did at turn 1, this Grand Prix just gone, when he's out qualifying McLarens each and every single race, who are quicker than him as far as their vehicular durable competitive advantage. When he's doing that sort of thing, Suzuka as near as makes no difference every year. 2021 as near as makes no difference every race. You will forgive me and we for Max glazing. And Damon Hill, to a certain extent, again, if sporting endeavour par excellence is something in which you can be invested, would need to get on board. Therefore, I think this is Damon doing one of these. Mea culpa, finally repenting and confessing his crimes and sins against Maximilian Verstappen, PLC. Damon Hill continues, quote, and there are very few phenomenon drivers. They are the ones that we know of, the Fangios, the Clarks, the Sennas and the Michael Schumachers. Lewis is a different type of driver. So this is what I'm saying. What I'm saying even is that he's more of a rapier than the battle axe in competition. They're very different, are Max Verstappen and Sir Lewis Hamilton. I think Lewis Hamilton's natural ability, I don't think he even knows the depths of it himself. He just somehow has been gifted with an extraordinary talent for driving and also a passion for racing as well. Damon Hill bookends his soliloquy thus: he still wants to race, does Lewis. It's more character differences than anything else, I would say. Championships longevity, you need to adjust it for inflation. I think they're level. Maximilian Verstappen still has it to do in terms of having said what I said about statistics. I think Max still has it all yet to deliver. Whereas Michael's delivered his championships, maybe Lewis has delivered his championships, maybe there was an 8th title which didn't happen, which should have done, but maybe he should have lost when Felipe Massa won. What? I don't know. Bloody Nora, Damon. Are we digging up old bones, really? If you're talking statistics, then of course it's Lewis and Michael. It's two-tiered in that sense. But are we comparing apples with apples? So Lewis Hamilton, if I recall, is 40 years old. How old is Maximilian Verstappen? 27. So let's compare and contrast when Max is of the same age now, if we're playing like for like, apples with apples game, surely. You want to compare and contrast. If we're having a proper Mount Rushmore conversation as far as F1, you need to compare these drivers really and truly. If I put on my accounting cap and we start playing accounting games, then you need to compare all of these drivers when all is said and done. When on their career, it's full stop, new paragraph, surely. That's when you'll get a true indication. And even then, to compare across era, how do you compare a Jim Clark to a Michael Schumacher? It's impossible. They didn't even drive the same car. Their cars bear no resemblance. But again, it's a fun conversation each and every single time. You're a legend superhero. Jomo representing as always. Lazy Damon is Michael Shooney's bear. I mean, Michael handed his AWS to him, didn't he, ultimately? But Damon, props to the chap. He still managed to get it over the line. Oh, and by the way, Liam Lawson. Look, I feel like Liam Lawson should, at this juncture, cut a very empathetic figure. I mean, he's had a hard time. catapulted into that Red Bull Racing spotlight, and since then has done nothing but struggled. He was going great guns once upon a time in that Racing Bulls car, wasn't he? He slotted into there nice and easy, as if he'd always been an F1 driver, when he was nothing of the sort. He was a rookie. However, I struggle to have empathy, to leverage and extend grace to Liam Lawson, the Kiwi, for a couple of different reasons. When your mouth writes checks that your ass cannot cash, it's techier than techie things as far as extending grace. I would argue, therefore, that sympathy doesn't come easy. That's currency, and it's thin on the ground as far as Liam Lawson. Why? Well, because he said things like this: Yuki Tsunoda is old news. I've beaten him in feeder formula. I don't want to hear anything about Tsunoda-san potentially getting the promotion over me at Red Bull Racing. That's what Liam Lawson said, not me. You've seen him swearing at all and sundry. The legend that is Fernando Plan Alonso included. How very dare you, Liam Lawson? If you achieved in your career, your F1 career, which might be curtailed very shortly, half of what Fernando Alonso has, then you can go away proud. That would mean, therefore, that you would walk away with one championship of the driver's variety, not two. Liam Lawson, bless him, has a confidence in him inbuilt, and that's good. But overconfidence and arrogance, particularly at this stage when you have zero accolades to accompany aforementioned confidence, can be a problem, particularly to old, grizzled, grey-bearded F1 veterans like myself. And then we come to find out, again per Joe Saward, that this is happening in the background. Joe Saward, accredited journalist, by the way, will be inside the paddock talking to guys and girls infinitely closer to these circumstances, these ever-revolving automotive pugilistic Rubik's Cubes than you, me, I, and we. Here's what he said. There are rumours in the paddock this race weekend just gone at Imola, the last Imola Grand Prix potentially on the F1 calendar, that Liam Lawson, who has been troubled in his time with Red Bull Racing and now Racing Bulls, will potentially be replaced. Joe Saward continues, quote, the word is that the driver most likely to step in for Liam Lawson has a name, and his name is Arvid Lindblad. No kidding, Sherlock, and it makes sense, especially when you take a step back and see the F1 wood for the F1 trees. Helmut Marko said, and again, he's been criticised for his lack of the ever infrequent occasions with which he has success from drivers that he's promoted via the Red Bull Junior program. Lest we forget Max Verstappen, of course, but he's the exception that proves the rule. Who else? Danny Rick, potentially for a little while, but how did that work out in the end? Sebastian Vettel, again, the exception that proves the rule. What about Daniel Kvyat? He was there in attendance this weekend, just past the Imola, right? Whatever happened to that chap? What happened to Alex Albon? Okay, so he's gone on to be gangbusters since his Red Bull Racing career. But when he was at Red Bull Racing, how did that work out? No bueno, I would argue. What about Pierre Gasly? Not fantastic. Ergo, the rule is this. The trend is as follows. As far as Red Bull Racing Junior program, they might have gone on great guns since Carlos Sainz too, but whilst they were at Red Bull Racing Technology, they failed to live up to expectation. Adverse variance to budget. Arvid Lindblad, however, Helmut Marko has told us he thinks he could be the next champion. Now, he's hesitant to say the next Max Verstappen because that might be an exercise in futility, especially when you see the level that of late that dude is operating at, making the impossible seem routine somehow. Therefore, why would you look to find yourself another diamond in the rough like a Max or a Seb Vettel? Exercise in futility settings, I would agree. But Helmut Marko said that the next Red Bull Racing champion might well have a name, and his name could be Arvid Lindblad, currently in F2, only 17 though, mind, and that's critical lest we forget Kimi Antonelli couldn't jump into that Mercedes until he turned 18. There is a Max Verstappen rule. He jumped into F1 when he was 17, and it was since, with the benefit of hindsight, deemed that was far too young. Now, the FIA, sans special dispensation and mitigating circumstances, an F1 driver has to be at the very least 18 and in possession or able, qualified to be able to go and get a driver's license in the civilian world. Now, however, it seems like Liam Lawson's his time's run out. Arvid Lindblad potentially favourite to replace him as soon as August. Why? Because the Anglo-Swede, just like Kimi Antonelli last year, turns 18 on August the 8th. I mean, that's chaos. 18th even. It's going to get techie. So they'll have to wait till August the 8th, writes Joe Saywood. He turns 18 on August. No, sorry. Your boy's all over the shop. Look at that. Fails to do his financial due diligence. Arvid Lindblad, for the avoidance of doubt, turns 18 on August the 8th. So it's going to get techie then. He's already eligible for the super license, writes Joe Saywood, because he did that Freca Oceana thing and won it in the off season. Therefore, put all your eggs in the Arvid Lindblad basket when they get rid of Liam Lawson. However, here's what's... I thought at first that it was harsh, but then I went away and did some financial due diligence to check whether Liam Lawson really has been that bad. Now, what's working against Liam is the fact that this is the rookie era, right? That these guys in Oliver Bearman, Antonelli, Isaac Hadjar too, also within the Red Bull Racing family, are ready to go out the box without compunction. What do you mean, Cameron? Surely Liam Lawson's outperformed Isaac Hadjar? Absolutely not. Here's what you need to know. Look, over the first few races, so there has been 7 of them this year. Liam Lawson in Japan, so Austria retired, China finished 12th, Japan 17th, 16th in Bahrain, 12th in Saudi Arabia, retired in Miami, Emilia Romagna Grand Prix, finished 14th. Isaac Hadjar, on the other hand, did not start in Australia, yeeted it into the barrier on the formation, that poor form, but ever since then he's been on a bit of a tear. 11th, 8th, 13th, 10th, 11th, 9th. That's 3 points scoring finishes from Isaac Hadjar, meaning therefore in the championship, bearing in mind Liam Lawson did 2 of those Grand Prix in a Red Bull racing car proper, not the white racing bulls, and that should mean for something, that matters. Remember, therefore, as a result of the aforementioned, in the Drivers' Championship, Isaac Hadjar currently sits in 14th on 7 points. Liam Lawson, having spent some time in the Racing Bulls, in the Red Bull racing car proper alongside Maximilian Verstappen, currently sits in 18th on nil points, 0 points. They'll be looking at him. They will be examining it. They'll have the details to hand. They'll see how far away he was in Delta absolute time performance as versus Maximilian Verstappen. And that, ladies and gentlemen, isn't a good look. They can't afford to carry any water. They can't afford to hold any laggards if indeed that's what they deem Liam Lawson to be, especially not when you've got Arvid Lindblad and the opportunity cost of his talent wasting away in F2. They won't hesitate to pull the trigger, as Red Bull never have. Sans Juan Checo Perez, Mexican Minister of Defense. They will get Arvid Lindblad in the car as soon as possible, potentially on August 8th of this year. Liam Lawson, the sword of Damocles, as far as Red Bull Racing is concerned, is about to be wielded on your head, and not before time, some would say, particularly if as your principal investment you are invested in Sporting Greatness PLC. Liam Lawson doesn't have it. It's the honest truth. It is harsh, but it is fair. What are we doing?